Welcome to A Journey Through the Generations podcast. I'm Philip.
Hi, I'm Trisha.
And today is a special edition of the podcast where we're going to cover Trisha's family reunion she went to last weekend for the Hatchett family. So I think probably the best place to start off, Trisha, is to just tell everybody about the reunion, where it was, when it was, that kind of thing.
It was the Hatchett family reunion the weekend of June 30th in Atlanta, Georgia. And this is my mother's paternal side of her family. And they have been having family reunions since the 1970s. So this is the family that I know the most about.
So I didn't get to go to the reunion, but I would imagine that it was a typical, reunion with a banquet, picnic, family meeting, that kind of stuff.
Yes, Friday night we had a meet and greet. It was basically people getting their t-shirts and their bags, meeting, eating, mingling, meeting family that we hadn't seen in a long time or just didn't know, period. And that started at 6 and it went to like 11 o'clock that night. And then Saturday, we stayed in a hotel right in the downtown area. So everything like the CNN building, the aquarium, the King Center, the Water, Coca-Cola, all of that was within walking distance. So those were the types of things that you could do Saturday during the day. And then Saturday night, we had our family banquet. And then Sunday was the picnic.
So one of the good things about you and doing your genealogy and researching your family tree is that as you talk to family members, they ask you to participate in family reunion activities. So for this particular reunion, they asked you to present during the banquet about something about the family history, right? So what I noticed on the program for the banquet that you showed me was that there was also a part of the presentation or of the banquet where someone got up and talked about family heritage.
Yes.
And so I know there was some concern about, well, if they're doing family heritage and they want me to do some history or something, what are we doing here?
Right.
So what was the family heritage part about?
The family heritage was more about family and what their accomplishments in their employment or their occupation type of thing. So they talked about lawyers that are in the family and doctors that are in the family, marketing people, educators. They took that approach in talking about our family.
And so they talked about more about their particular branch of the family tree, though, right? But in your presentation, you took on the root of the tree, right? Like the person that we know of today, right now, that the tree stems from, right?
Correct.
So
I talked about Robert Hatchett. He is my 3 times great-grandfather.
And before you do that, we know Robert Hatchett's mother.
Yes, Sally.
Right. So we know some information about Sally.
All we know is her name.
All we know is her name.
And that was his mother. Okay.
So we don't know any dates, where she's from, anything. So although we know Sally's name, we don't have any evidence that was really her name. Where did Sally, who came up with that, or not came up with it, but who knew about that?
Well, in the first reunion in 1973, this was back when my grandfather and his brothers and sisters, most of them were still alive, they remembered their father talking about his grandmother, his great-grandmother, and he remembered that her name was Sally and that her son was Robert. And so that's how the kind of reunions kind of started, because they were all talking about Robert Hatchett, and he remembered about the story that had been given to him about how they were freed by this general during the Civil War. And that's when they decided that we should have a reunion with all the Hatchetts. So it's kind of like oral history,
right? So Sally, we're pretty confident that Sally is Robert's mother. Yes. We just don't know anything about her. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So
because it was during slavery, obviously.
Right. So you talked about Robert And whereas, so you took kind of a broad approach and talked about the whole entire tree, your family tree. And those people who did the family heritage talked about their branch, which all eventually goes up to Robert.
Right.
But okay, so what did you talk about in your presentation?
So I talked about Robert Hatchett, and I began the presentation with, if everybody who's a Hatchett in this room were to do their family tree, we would all go back to Robert Hatchett, because Sally had one child, Robert Hatchett, and then he had 3 children, and that's where the branches started separating. So I taught, and I was able to find in my research the actual newspaper article where he and his family were freed by the Union General Curtis. So I had that in my presentation. I had his minister credentials from the Jackson County Library and Archives. I had that. I had his son Peter's marriage record and his son Harold's marriage record from the Freedmen Bureaus that was back in the 1860s. So I basically talked about Robert Hatchett, and I, gave homage to the man that started our family by marrying Amy and having these children, and they had children. So he is the second, I guess, descendant, if you want to count Sally as our first.
Okay, so one of the things that we talked about leading up to the reunion was you were really concerned about, because this side of the family keeps up with the history, knows the history, and a lot of the older people who are still around already know this stuff. So you were concerned about going and presenting information that they already knew, right?
Right, because we have what I call this Hatchett book. It's 89 pages of the 10 generations of Hatchetts since Sally. So, and this is public knowledge. They have it out at all the reunions. And I was like, well, they already know this. What am I going to do? Just repeat what's in the book?
Right. And my feedback to you was, yeah, they know, some of the information that you're presenting, but you had from microfilm an article in the paper about Robert Hatchett and his emancipation.
Right.
And so, yes, they knew that, but to actually see it in print somewhere
with his name,
with the owner's name, that gives it a little different feel to it, right?
It gives a different perspective.
Yeah. So you can know it, but actually seeing it, that it was true, it makes it a little bit different.
And it's in the newspaper, so it's going to be there forever. Anybody who ever wants to look it up or find it will be able to go and find it.
Yeah, and then not only that, you also have younger people who are at the reunion, and I'm not even really talking about the kids. I mean, I'm talking about
like Alan.
Yeah, the older, a little bit older, maybe the in college or recently graduating, and they're starting their own families, and it's going to be, those families are going to be a new branch off the Robert Hatchett tree.
Right.
They should know this too, and they may not know it.
And that's what you kept telling me, is that the young people don't know this, or maybe haven't seen it, and this is really who my target audience is. And I know just from this experience that I take for granted that I know so much about our family, because my nephew Alan, who is 23 years old, he was just astonished about all the information that he learned about.
Yeah. And your number one goal in doing this, not doing your tree, but talking to people about it, is to inspire your family and other people to learn more about their family, or start doing their tree, or
because I'm all about, you have to know where you have come from to know where you're going. And I want my love of history to be reflective for other people. So Alan doesn't necessarily have to do the work that I have done, but he knows the story.
What kind of feedback did you get from the presentation? Were people, happy with it? Did they like it? What?
I feel like they were very impressed by the information that I was able to give them. Like you said, they actually were able to see the article with his name in it, the newspaper date and everything. So they really appreciated the documents that I was able to add to the information that some of them maybe have already seen. But not only that, people who didn't know the story, it's easier to look at a newspaper article and read it than me getting up talking and just stating the facts. Giving them that visual, I feel like they really appreciated that. They were very impressed with the fact that I was able to find this kind of information from the 1800s. And they were very receptive to what I was saying and the journey that I had taken to be able to present this to them. So I feel like it was overall very positive.
Yeah. So you took Wesley with you,
yes,
to it, and obviously it's not his first reunion. Probably, is this his first Hatchet reunion?
His first Hatchet reunion.
But he knew what to expect.
Yeah.
So from a reunion, how was his? How was he during the reunion?
He enjoyed it. He loves meeting new people. He loves, of course, staying in hotels and going to new cities. But he actually, like during the meet and greet, he did not just sit all up under me. He went around and he talked to a few people. And he has looked at the Hatchet book that I call, so he's familiar with the history that I was presenting. And he actually ran the PowerPoint for me because they were in the way the room was set up. I couldn't do both and talk on the microphone, so he did that for me. So overall, I think he had a really good time. He was very outgoing. He wanted to meet people, and the first thing people ask at a reunion is of this, because it was like almost 200 people at the reunion, which I thought was a good turnout.
Yeah, that's good.
How are you related to the Hatchetts? And Wesley's 14, so I was a little apprehensive if he was going to be able to navigate to be able to tell them how, because my last name is not Hatchett, my maiden name is not Hatchett. But he did. He was like, well, my mom's mother is Patricia Hatchett Mays, and her father was a Hatchett. So he was able to explain it to people that came up to him, which I was very impressed by.
Yeah, that's good. And it's not really hard to get 200 people to Atlanta. Really.
That is true.
I mean, it's Atlanta.
It's Atlanta.
You're probably not going to get 200 people to go to Little Rock.
Probably not.
So, when you have a family reunion in a city like Atlanta, you're probably going to have the best turnout.
Yeah, they said it was one of the best turnouts they've had in at least the last 10 reunions.
Yeah, I know I've always enjoyed my visits to Atlanta.
And like I said, we were right down the street from everything. We were within walking distance. The hotel was beautiful. So yes, they did an excellent job with all of the logistics.
Yeah. So, any feedback or last comments you want to make?
The only thing I have left to say is that I really enjoyed it, and of course I thanked everybody for asking me to be a part of the banquet program. And this, of course, sparks more interest in me to find out more about Sally. So that's my next goal. I actually have a microfilm over at the Family Search library in Bentonville that I think might have some interesting information about the Picketts when they were in Virginia. So I'm hoping that her name comes up in a wheel or something like that. So that's what I'll be doing for the next couple of weeks, going through that.
Cool. So I think one of the things that you did do before we finished this is you told people about this podcast and
Yes.
what we were doing, with the podcast. So I just say, if you're a Hatchet family member and you're listening to this, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for listening.
And yeah, thank y'all for listening. And we hope that you learn more about your family, or you help Trisha able to continue her research. That'd be great. So what we're going to do on the next podcast coming up soon, we'll have some tips that Trisha give out as we go through that podcast to help you navigate through your own journey, your own research. If you've started, if you haven't started and just don't know where to start, we'll give you some tips and things to kind of help you. It'll be more Trisha than me. I can probably help give some I don't know, technology
Yeah.
advice or something maybe. But anyway, so we'll do that next time. So we're gonna probably wrap it up here. Thank you guys for listening. Feel free to leave a comment if you're listening in the Bumpers app. Please feel free to leave a comment. We would appreciate that. If you're listening through iTunes, if you want to leave a review or a rating there, you can. You can subscribe to the podcast on both Bumpers and iTunes. You can just go to either one of them or both, whatever you want to do, and search for A Journey Through the Generations and just hit the subscribe button. And you can follow along with Trisha as she writes in her blog her journey and her research. And you can go on WordPress called Journey Through the Generations, and you can subscribe and follow her there, and you'll get notification every time she posts a blog. So we'll just finish that, and thank you guys for listening.
Thanks so much.